Hi, I'm Nicole Smithee, the co-founder and CEO of Iridescent Women, an online community committed to awakening and championing the brilliance in every woman. I also have the great honor of serving on the executive team at Liberty Church right here in New York City, where I'm joining you from. Now, I'm not sure where in the world you're joining Current Conference from, but I want to take a moment just to say thank you. It really is an honor to be learning alongside you, as well as to be sharing alongside so many innovators, trailblazers, disciple makers. And today I want to add to the conversation and I want to share with you around a topic that I feel is incredibly relevant for the times we're living in. It's timely, it's practical, which is key, and the events this year have exposed just how needed this conversation is. I want us to explore for a bit what it looks like for us to build deeper connection in the digital world. Now, I think we all understand the power of the digital space, that we all value entering that space and innovating in that space. You know, perhaps 10 years ago, as the church, we were kind of coming to terms with what digital meant and figuring out what it means to have a website or a social media presence or building an app. But I feel like we as a whole understand now that there is true value in entering the digital space. But I'm afraid that perhaps we are cutting ourselves short when it comes to digital. We are not fully maximizing the potential that digital offers us today, because we've seen what the breadth of social media could look like in terms of outreach and gaining more followers and gaining more momentums. We understand the breadth of what social can do, but not necessarily what the depth of social could mean in the lives of those we're engaging with. I think that we put a lot of emphasis on expanding our reach, a lot of emphasis on impacting more lives through the digital space, but not necessarily given enough thought. And I think it's an important thought to give to take a moment and say, it's not just about how many lives we're impacting, but how deep the impact goes in the lives of those we're reaching. I think we have an amazing opportunity in this day and age to create deep connection with those that we're engaging with through digital, not just expanding our reach again, but building deep connection that will lead to change, lead to transformation in people's lives. And we know that this connection is possible digitally because we live in it every day, don't we? I mean, just yesterday, my nephew, Rocco, he turned 8 years old, and he lives in Ohio. I live in New York City with my husband, and so I couldn't physically be in the same space with him to celebrate his birthday. But you know what I was able to do? I was able to watch him open his presents. In fact, there was one present that he opened that he just went, yes, with his two fists in the air, and I knew we had gotten him a good gift at that moment. And I'll always be able to cherish and remember that moment and that experience. Not only did I get to watch him open his presents, but we got to play Legos together, and I got to meet his new puppy that he had gotten for his birthday. Now, I wasn't physically in the same space with him, but I definitely was able to connect with him, to make new memories, to celebrate with him, and I was able to do it because of the digital world that we live in. I was able to FaceTime with my nephew. We have these kind of experiences every day that are not just about consuming content, but about making deep connections that provoke change. And so with the few minutes that we have together, I want to share with you 4 principles that I believe are so important for us to make the paradigm shift of not just trying to reach a wider audience, but deepen the connection that we have with that audience while we're reaching them. And these are going to have different practicalities for you and for me as we kind of sort out what's best for our ministries, our local churches. But my hope and my prayer is that they will provoke some really great conversations amongst your team, that they might lead to some big aha moments for you, some breakthrough moments, so that you can truly deepen connection and see disciple-making, personal connection taking place on the digital spaces that you're in. So here's the thought number 1, the first principle to help us kind of shift our mentality to not just the breadth of social media, but the depth of social media to help us deepen our connection, and it's this: we get to go where they are. I think it's so important that we recognize that the digital world that we live in today gives us a really amazing, remarkable, phenomenal opportunity that other times in history people haven't had so readily globally, to be able to go where people are. We get to enter the space that they are in through digital every single day, because where are people? They are on their phones, they are on their laptops, they are on their iPads, they're engaging on social media, they're listening to podcasts, they're watching YouTube videos, they are online. In fact, some most recent studies in the last couple years have said that the average consumption rate of screen time on a smartphone is 3.5 hours on average. Yeah, and 20% of smartphone users actually spend over 4.5 hours a day on their phones. This is where people are. And the Bible is really clear. The Great Commission that's been given to us is not just to create great programming for people to come and experience. No. The Great Commission says, go and make disciples. In other words, go and enter the spaces that people are in and invite them into the kingdom of God. Invite them to have a real encounter with Christ that transforms every fabric of their lives. In Luke chapter 14, Jesus tells the story of a master who puts together this great banquet, and then all of the friends that he invited, they flake on him, and so he has nobody to fill his room, to fill the great banquet. And he gets angry. And not only does he get angry, but this person, he kind of pivots directions a bit, and he gives new orders to his servants. In verse 20 and 21, it says, "Go out quickly into the streets and the alleys of the towns and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." "Sir," the servant said, "what you ordered has been done, but there's still room." Then the master told the servant, "Go out to the roads and the country lanes and compel them to come in so that my house will be full." Do you hear that word, go? Go to the alleys, go to the roads, go to the country lanes, go to where the people are and invite them. And that's exactly what we get to do with digital. We get to do more than just be a billboard for our ministries, but we get to engage in the everyday lives of people. We get to enter the spaces and the conversations that are relevant to their lives. We get to go. I think that it's time for us as a church to not just put a lot of emphasis on preparing the great banquet, so to speak, which I think historically we do. We think through our worship services, our in-person gatherings, and we want to make them the most excellent, spirit-led experiences that it could possibly be. And I think that is so beautiful. But let's not neglect as well the importance of being strategic and thoughtful and innovative with how we go and invite. That's what digital gets to be for us, a place where we can meet people right where they are with the message of Jesus and with truth and love that they need in their everyday lives. Not only do we get to go where people are, but we get to build connection by taking it a step further. We get to actually speak to what matters most to them. We get to engage in conversations that are relevant in people's lives, and we get to do that through the digital space. I think it's so important that we not only put out great content that looks and feels great on our different digital platforms, but we take a step back and we ask the question, what do people really need right now? What is going to most resonate with them? That we become great at getting to know the people that we're called to serve and pivoting and innovating and creating content that is going to engage people with relevant topics in their everyday lives. Now, this might sound pretty simple and straightforward, but I want to remind us that sometimes it's a little bit easier said than done. That requires us to really lean in, to listen, to pay attention, to measure our success, not just in the way a website feels, for example, but how people are responding to that, how they're sharing, how they're commenting, how they're engaging. One of the series that we did this past year surprised us at Iridescent Women. Across all of our platforms, we regularly do different series, and we've done a number of them over the years, but the one that had the top engagement for us was when we focused on mental health awareness. Now, we've done series on living bold and brave and innovating and trailblazing, and yet the one that resonated most deeply with our audience, that caused the most engagement, the most sharing, the most conversation, was mental health awareness. It was when we got real and honest about some of the struggles that women are facing, when we were able to provide women the opportunity to share their breakthrough stories and offer hope to other women. This was where we realized we're creating content that is resonating with women. It's more than just consuming great content for them. It's more than just grabbing their attention. Now we're having the opportunity to engage their hearts and their minds. We're creating a space where content is provoking them not just to go, that's an interesting thought or a new perspective, but a layer deeper where they feel like they're seen and heard. That's the power that we have in a digital space to really build that kind of connection by speaking to what matters most. Jesus was great at this. He really was. He told parables, he told stories, and within them he injected truth about the kingdom of God, but he spoke to things that were relevant in people's everyday lives. He talked about their work lives. He talked about their family dynamics. He talked about the cultural norms. He said a farmer once, was sowing seed. A shepherd lost a sheep. A person was putting on a great party and nobody showed up who was initially invited. I mean, these things were very real in their everyday lives, and it was because of that. It's because he was speaking to what mattered most to them that they were able to understand, they were able to hear truth, and they were able to be exposed to the good news. That's what we get to do in a digital space. So let's make sure that we're not only meeting people where they're at, but we are speaking to what matters most to them. And I think we have an opportunity to take it a little bit further and not just speak to what matters most to people, but also to create dialogues and not just monologues on our platforms. Have you ever met somebody who they just really love to talk? You know what I'm saying? I've been guilty of this myself at different times. My husband would attest to this. But those people where you're having a meeting with them and it's hard to just get a word in, or you're on a phone call catching up with a relative and they're just talking and talking and talking. They're talking so much that if you were to actually leave the conversation for a second and re-engage, they wouldn't even notice. Guilty. I've definitely done that with a relative or two of mine. They do all the talking, and so they leave the experience feeling like they had a really great interaction with you, but rarely is the one who's just having to listen and not being able to really interject or add to the conversation. They don't quite feel like the conversation was as meaningful, do they? I know I haven't when I've been in those situations. We have to be careful, I think, when we're creating our platforms and we're adding content, that we don't end up creating something that feels really great to us but really felt more like a monologue to the person consuming the content, that there was no outlet for them to give us feedback. There was no opportunity for them to have a discussion, to share, to contribute, to add to the conversation. And we live in a day and age now with digital where we have an opportunity where we can create these two-way conversations, where we can really see our platforms as not just a platform for our voice to be heard, but a platform for many people to engage within, and through that build really deep connections that are going to lead to action and are going to lead to change, lead to contribution. I know at Iridescent, one of our values from the very beginning was to create a platform for women by women. And so even though we have a regular team of writers, even though myself and my co-founder and our core team, we love to contribute to the site regularly, we're not the primary voice. And in the last couple years, we have been so grateful to have over 200 different writers contribute to our website alone. We've had over 75 women that we've had the great honor and privilege of being able to interview and hear some of their aha moments, some of their expertise, some of their breakthroughs, some of their perspectives. And by creating a platform where many women get to share their voice, we've created an environment where it doesn't feel like just content, but more and more it's feeling like community. Now that might look different for you, but I want to challenge you, I want to encourage you, start to create dialogue and not monologue. Then you go from having somebody who's consuming your content to somebody who's now connecting and sharing and vocalizing and expressing. And this is where you can build that kind of connection that's going to lead to change. And here's my final thought for us. And it's this: not only can we create dialogue, but we can also create resources that we can gift people with what will equip them. And I think this is really important for us as paraministries, as local churches. We're doing the work of the gospel, and we are in the business, in the ministry of making disciples, and that requires people to apply truth in their everyday lives. And we have an opportunity to create resources to help them do just that, and we get to use digital to be that means. I think it's easy to create inspirational content these days. I think it really is. I mean, there is a plethora of inspirational content out there, and there's nothing wrong with being inspired. That's really important. I want to be inspired. I'm sure you do too. But we have an opportunity now with digital to go beyond just inspiring people. We can actually give them the tools that they need to not just think about the things they should do, but really be equipped to do the things that are going to lead to growth, change, success in their everyday lives. And for example, we can preach sermons that talk about why people should be reading the Bible. And yes, it's important to understand that. But we can take it a step further now and not just inspire people to read their Bibles on a daily basis, but we can create online Bible studies where we are exploring Scripture together in real time. We can go beyond a conversation that says that prayer is powerful and prayer is important and prayer should be a daily rhythm in people's lives. And now we can actually, through iMessenger, through different applications in the digital space, we can have real-time prayer happening. We can pray for people on the spot. We can do more than just inspire people. We can now equip people, and that's where real lasting change happens. This is all part of building connection, and connection is powerful, and it is so important. You know, I think about the last 2 years of Iridescent, and really in a lot of ways we're just getting started, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity we've had to continue to grow as a digital presence and a digital platform across a lot of different digital mediums. But I think what excites me the most when I look back over the last 2 years and I look ahead isn't just growing numbers, which yes, numbers matter and analytics and data are our friends, but I actually think about how connection has led to breakthrough for different women's lives. I think about Kayla, who a year and a half ago published her first written piece at Iridescent, and she's always had a deep desire to be a writer, and that was a huge step forward to her. And now a year and a half later, she has just recently published, she's co-authored and published her first book in London. I think about Carrie, and I think about how she bravely, for the first time in her life, publicly shared her story of spiritual abuse that she experienced in the church, and how she was not only able to heal from that experience, but to reconcile and to regain a deep love for the local church and be a contributor and leader in her church. And that story was not easy for her to tell, but when she did, it became a real defining moment for her, where she went from just being somebody who's personally overcome something, but to encourage and equip others to do the same. I think about Teresa, who we interviewed very early on our platform about her expertise, and I think about how that gave her the courage to take a huge step forward and start her own business that has not only survived a pandemic, but continues to grow and thrive. I think about Kim, who published her first article and shared her story of joy in grief and finding joy in the midst of grief. And that article was actually published on the year anniversary of her trying to commit suicide, on a day where she was so grateful that she was just alive, and remembering all that God had done in her life, she was also able to share encouragement, share wisdom to so many women. Not only were these pivotal moments for these women's lives, but because they were able to enter into a digital platform that was actively creating opportunities for connection. There are countless women who also have had their own aha moments, their own breakthrough moments, their own moments of encouragement, inspiration, equipping in their own lives. Now, the reality is, most of these women will never meet each other face to face, but they are deeply connected to each other. They are a part of an online community, and truly, that is what it's becoming for so many women. This is the power of digital, not only to reach more people, but also to engage deeply, to have greater connection. And so I want to encourage you, as you're pivoting, as you're innovating, as you're creating, as you're leaning into what God has called you to as a church or as a ministry, and you're praying about what that looks like in digital space. My hope and my prayer is that you would create phenomenal content as you should, that you would continue to reach more and more people as you should, but that you'd not only build great content, but that you would build great connection, because connection leads to change, to transformation, to disciple making. That's my hope and prayer for you. Thanks for allowing me to share today.